With this political and historical background, let's look at the verdict per se, which was delivered on 30th of September. This is a question that was asked in Indian media quite a number of times during the debates immediately after the verdict was delivered. The question is very simple. Are you disappointed by this verdict, and why? If you are.
Well, no. I mean, the purpose of the verdict is to settle the issue, to put a stop to the whole controversy. And if everybody abides by the verdict, I think that the verdict provides for that. Of course, it's a bit strange that the judges first say, well, historically, of course, the site has a Hindu history, is a Hindu sacred site, and then to say, well, we'll divide it. Two of the Hindu litigants get each 1/3, and the Sunni Waqf board get another third. Well, I mean, as a historian, I don't want to pronounce on the rights and wrongs of that verdict juridically, but it leaves scope for an amicable settlement, especially because the judges, including the Muslim judge, there were 3 judges, 2 Hindus, 1 Muslim, all 3 agreed that at any rate the central site, the actual contentious site, should be left to the Hindus. Now, they say 1/3, but that means 1/3 of the plot presently controlled and owned by the government, which is pretty large, which is a lot more than the precise contentious site. So in my opinion, it's okay to leave 1/3 of that to the Muslims somewhere. And then it is up to them to decide if they want to insist on building another mosque there, but at any rate not at the contentious site. So I think in that respect the judgment is fair enough. It doesn't humiliate the Muslim litigants, it gives them something too. So in a political sense I think it's a good judgment. Now, as a historian, of course, I find it slightly funny that they justify their judgment with a few strange assumptions. I think 2 of the judges, not all of them, have first of all said it is the birthplace of Rama. Now, I am not sure if you can say that. It is very difficult to prove that someplace is the birthplace of anyone. Even your own birthplace, if you say, I was born in a hospital in Mumbai and that hospital still exists and they have very good records, see, that proves it, then the JNU historians will say, but you see, maybe some Hindu fundamentalist doctor has mislaid the papers and tried to pretend that somebody else was born there instead of you, or something. You see, they will find some conspiracy and explain away the evidence. Now, this is all the more true when you speak of somebody born thousands of years ago. So that, I don't know if they needed to go into that at all. The main point is that it has been accepted as the birthplace of Rama by Hindus for hundreds of years, at any rate since well before the controversy started. There's enough testimony of that. You see, you don't need to believe in Rama in order to accept the fact that first of all, Rama is held sacred by a large community of people, and that secondly, they also believe that he was born at that site, and that birth was particularly important, because to them Rama is the incarnation of Vishnu. So the birth, the coming down of Vishnu into the human world is a particularly important aspect of Rama's role and religious significance. So that in itself should be reason enough to respect it. In fact, that counts for Muslims, that counts for secularists. You see, I have compared it once with the site in France of Lourdes, which is where the Virgin Mary is supposed to have appeared to a little girl in, I think, 1858. Now, France is a militantly secular state, and most French officials don't believe in this apparition. Nevertheless, because there is an important community of people who do believe in it, the French government protects the site, you see, makes all kinds of arrangements for the pilgrims. So, you see, the fact that there are human beings who believe this means that out of respect for those human beings, you should, you know, be lenient with traditions even if you don't believe in them. And you see, I think that is secularism in the good sense of the term, that, you know, you arrange for different religions to coexist without conflict. Now, in this case, Ayodhya is a sacred site for Hindus, not for Muslims, not for anybody else, to some extent for Buddhists, because Buddhists in fact believe that Rama was also an earlier incarnation of the Buddha, and that is even before Hindus started saying that Rama and Buddha were incarnations of Vishnu. This is really in the oldest Buddhist text, in the Jatakas, that you find this. And of course no Hindu objects to Buddhists coming on pilgrimage to this site. But at any rate, you see, the question of whether Rama was born there, while interesting, should, in my opinion, not form part of the justification of the practical arrangement that the judges have imposed. Secondly, they do acknowledge, at any rate the majority opinion of the court, is that indeed the mosque was built in forcible replacement of a temple. So far so good. You see, that at any rate, at long last, acknowledges the existing body of evidence.
In fact, the third judge, Justice Khan, though does not acknowledge that the temple was demolished, but he does record or acknowledge the fact that a pre-existing Hindu temple which was in ruins,
yes,
was replaced or was built upon using probably the material from that ruins. And that is also another interesting point, because I was reading that, and please validate this, that in case of Hindus there are many ruined buildings which were temples, ruined temples, which are in ruins because there are no people to fund it and support it and maintain it, but people still worship there, though they are in bad condition, but people still go and worship the deity presiding there. So even if the building was...
At any rate, the mosque was built at a site where Hindus were worshipping. Therefore, it was at any rate misplaced. You see, we'll come to the point of the demolished temple, but even without a temple at the site itself was sacred to the Hindus. Therefore, the imposition of the mosque on a Hindu sacred site is an act of aggression, is an act of disrespect. As I said, you see, Hindus kept on worshipping there even when there was a mosque standing. So it was the site itself that was important.
Yeah.
A temple, of course, if it's demolished, it can be rebuilt somewhere else. But in this case, it is the site itself that mattered. Now, of course, skeptical people, non-religious people may find all this a bit overdone. You see, why worry about this particular site? But, if we're going to respect religions, then we should respect that convention that Rama is preferentially worshipped at that particular site. Another point that I found strange in the judgment is that the judges agreed, and in fact they agreed not just amongst each other, but with one of the Hindu litigants, that the demolition of a temple is an un-Islamic act, and that a mosque built in such conditions is therefore not really a mosque. Well, that is very strange. Of course, you see, Islam has quite a history of replacing non-Muslim religious buildings with mosques. You have, for example, the Hagia Sophia in Istanbul, which was a cathedral of the Greek Orthodox. The Mezquita, the famous mosque in Cordoba, that is now again used as a church, but that has been built in forcible replacement of a Catholic cathedral. Likewise, the Umayyad Mosque in Damascus was originally a Christian church, and you can still see parts of it in the building. So this is a very common Islamic tradition. And so to say that it is a non-Islamic act to demolish somebody else's place of worship is simply not true. But I understand that in the Indian context, in order not to offend Muslim and secularist sensibilities, perhaps you see that that little white lie, was the lesser evil. So I don't want to fuss too much about it.